Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well. Today's video, we're going to be covering some stock Logic Pro plugins that you should know about, and you should also be using more if you're not, because they are really great, and I think they get slept on. All the way from the start, I can feel it in my heart, like all the way from the start. The first plugin on the list is Phat FX, and I think this was introduced somewhere around the time that the vintage EQ collection came through, maybe 10.4, maybe a little earlier than that. But this is a very jam-packed plugin. There's a lot of different stuff going on in Phat FX, and I think when you first open it up, you might be a little bit overwhelmed. So I'm going to show you a couple modules in here that just by themselves are really good. And the first one is the distortion. And this is not your typical distortion because we can activate it and we get three different parameters or three different kind of saturations or distortions. And then we can blend these together to get a really unique tone. So for instance, right now I have soft saturation and tube. And what this is going to allow me to do, and this is something we talk about a lot on the channel, is to kind of emulate what a preamp would do, like a hardware preamp. So we're going to add a little bit of soft saturation to the signal, and then we can also introduce some of that tube saturation. So let me just play back this vocal. I'm going to solo it, and I'm going to slowly bring these up.
Now the leaves are falling, I am falling, I am okay. Now the leaves are falling, I am falling, I am okay. Maybe an earthquake or a hurricane.
So you can hear when we activate that, we get some nice heat, some of that thickness, some of that analog warmth that we talk about trying to achieve a lot on the channel. So very nice module just there in the distortion. Now let's go over to the compressor, which in this vocal chain, I do not have a compressor here because I want to show you how cool the built-in compressor is in Phat FX. So if we turn this on, we've only got two controls on this compressor, but then we get all of the different compressors that come with Logic. So Platinum Digital, Studio, VCA, all that stuff. We can select one of them. But for those of you who are not as familiar with compression and you're not as comfortable getting your hands dirty with the threshold, the ratio, tack release, makeup, this one's very easy to use because you just have two controls, amount and then the release. So let's just bring these both down and we'll just compress this vocal here. I'll show you how quickly we can dial in a really nice compression setting for a vocal.
Now the leaves are falling, I am falling, I am okay. Now the leaves are falling, I am falling, I am okay. Maybe an earthquake or a hurricane will wash this all away, wash this all away.
So just controlling the amount just to get enough of the compression there, and then controlling the release time is going to give you a little bit different dynamic. But just two controls there, and I think there's some auto makeup gain going on, obviously, because we're introducing the compression, but the vocal is getting louder. So again, this just makes it easier for those of you who, again, are not as comfortable controlling all of the different parameters with a standard compressor. So you've also got some cool things in here like the bass enhancer. So this vocal, a little thin maybe, we can turn that on, and we've got some different bass types. Let's just bring that up.
Now the leaves are falling, I am falling, I am okay. Now the leaves are falling, I am falling, I am okay. Maybe an earthquake.
All right, next up on the list for stock mixing plugins for Logic Pro that you should know about is Spreader. And so I get a lot of questions on the channel about, what are some alternatives to some of my favorite stereo width plugins like Wider from Infected Mushroom. Some other good ones like the Matthew Lane plugins. Stereo Delta is fantastic. And so a lot of you are wondering, how can we achieve something similar with a stock plugin? And the spreader in Logic is a great way to do that. It is not the same as those plugins. It does sound different, but the approach and what you're ultimately trying to accomplish with it and what it does, if you've got a mono signal or something with very little stereo width to it, spreader's just going to spread it out. And it is effective. It does have a certain sort of sound to it, but I've found in the context of, background vocals and punches and dubs, it actually works surprisingly well. I wouldn't necessarily use it as much on leads because it does have this certain tone to it. But let me just let you hear it here with our background vocals. I'll play it back with it disabled and turn it on for you.
Yeah. Cause calm waters and sunsets ain't promised, let's be honest. Yeah. Cause calm waters and sunsets ain't promised, let's be honest. Now, yeah. Could you and I weather a storm, if any or plenty? Cause calm waters and sunsets ain't promised, let's be honest. Can I tell you how I feel?
So I've only got one background vocal layer there, but using spreader, we can just give it that stereo width, makes our verse more exciting with that laid underneath it. You can use this in a lot of different contexts. Next up on the list is a reverb. However, I'm going to surprise you guys here. It is not Chromaverb, and it is not Space Designer. So Space Designer and Chromaverb are really the reverbs that rightfully so get the most attention in Logic Pro. They're very good, but there's a little lightweight reverb called Silververb. This is an excellent, just efficient little reverb plugin that I like to use for small room spaces. So for hip hop vocals that, maybe are just a little dead and you want to add some ambience, some life to it, I find that it's really effective here. So let me go and we'll just play back this verse without it, and then we'll turn it on, let you hear what it's doing.
It's the moment, that's why I wrote it. Every day make the play, stay in motion. They don't play, make me take the promotion. It's okay, see the hate, help me focus. Slip the drink that I made, it's a potion. In the days, make you save what you smoking. Build a base in their face, make them notice. Change your game if you hate where it's going, motivated.
The acoustic space that the recording was done in just sounds a little dead, and so we're adding a little bit of life to it. And also we get some stereo width that just makes the vocals sound more exciting and in the pocket with the beat. So if you want to try that out on your hip hop vocals where you don't want a big washy reverb, but again, you want to add some character to it with some room ambience, Silververb is great, and you can use a ton of these and they're not going to kill your CPU like, Chromaverb or even Space Designer can if you start to get carried away with them. They are resource intensive. Next up on the list of stock mixing plugins for Logic that you should know about is Delay Designer. So this one gets slept on quite a bit because we have the tape delay as well as the stereo delay in Logic Pro X, which are both pretty good. They're great utilities, although they're a little limited in my opinion. They're good at certain things, but when you want to do some very specific sorts of echoes, they just don't really cut it all the time. Thankfully, Delay Designer picks up a lot of the slack, but it hasn't gotten updated in terms of the GUI. And it's also just kind of confusing when you first open it up. You're wondering how to kind of use it. It just isn't very user friendly. But once you get into it and you learn what's going on here, it's a very powerful delay and echo processor. So let's just dial a setting in really quick just so I can show you that it's not as complicated as it seems. So when you first open it up, you're going to see that we've got a sync button and then we've got our grid laid out here. And let's just set that to, say, an eighth note. And when we first play it back, it's just going to do a quarter note echo.
Whenever you want it, whenever you want it, whenever you need it, whenever you need it.
Right? So that tap, or what's represented with that quarter note echo, is here listed as A. So if I click on that, then we have all the settings for that particular tap or echo. We can change all kinds of things like the filtering. We can even do pitch, which is pretty cool. Let's do that real quick. Let's say we wanted to, maybe go up an octave. So we'll go up 12 semitones on that echo. You can also do them just by synths, so you can get a little bit more of like a chorusing kind of effect with that. If we want to narrow the stereo field with that.
Whenever you want it, whenever you need it, whenever you want it, see the love in your eyes.
And then you can control the level of that particular echo or tap. So now that we've got that set up, let's say we wanted to now add another echo. So I can just click the pencil tool down here at the bottom and just click there on B. If we set that here, we'll get an 8th note echo.
Whenever you want it, whenever you need it.
So we've got the quarter note with A, and then we've got the 8th note with B, and I can independently set the tone of this one as well. So let's just filter this one a bit. Maybe we'll change the synth just a touch, and we'll narrow it out some. And let's see what that gives us. Turn up the resonance.
Whenever you want it, whenever you need it, whenever you want it, see the love in your eyes. Whenever you want it, whenever you need it, whenever you want it.
So it's pretty nice sounding delay, right? So again, not the prettiest thing to look at, and it's a little bit confusing when you first start to use it. But once you get used to it, I'm finding that I'm actually using this more than any of the other delay plugins in Logic in terms of the stock ones, because it is the most powerful, the most flexible, and you can really dial in, these different echoes for your sound. All right, so the last one in the list of stock mixing plugins for Logic Pro that you should know about is De-Esser 2. Now, I did a video on this whenever this update first came out, and I was really excited about it because the original De-Esser in Logic is just bad. It's not very useful at all. And this one adds a lot more functionality. It is a lot better. However, there is some confusion on this because when you first pull it up, this is the factory default setting, and it doesn't really do what you want it to do initially. You've got to get your hands dirty, and I'll show you how to do that. But like if I play it back right now just with the stock setting on, you're going to hear that my S's are still really harsh, which is what I think a lot of you all are experiencing.
Past pain plays like projections in my mind. Pass the time by venting through these lines all in the summertime. The sun is much brighter when I picture you in it.
I mean, maybe a little bit better, but it's not really doing what we want it to do. And so what I've found is that there's two modes in the De-Esser 2, relative and absolute. Now, if you have it set to relative, that means no matter where we put this detection point in terms of the threshold, it's going to identify the energy of the sibilant frequencies. A little confusing because a traditional De-Esser would normally be on absolute, right? And you just set that threshold. When it crosses above the threshold, then we get the attenuation with the De-Esser, which is probably what we're going to do to set this. But let's leave it on relative right now. And I'm going to pull that down and just let you kind of hear what's happening.
Past pain plays like projections in my mind. Pass the time by venting through these lines all in the summertime. The sun is much.
So for me, again, I still just don't really like the sound of it. I have not been using relative as much, but I have found that if you dial in the frequency more, it will sound better. Also, using a wide range can help too. So let's just try that.
Past pain plays like projections in my mind. Pass the time by venting through these lines all in the summertime. The sun is much brighter when I picture you in it.
So that's a little better, but let's go ahead and just set it to absolute. So we're going to get more of a traditional De-Esser. I don't know why they have the max reduction at 20 dB. That's a lot. I guess if you're using this on like a hi-hat or something, maybe, but on a vocal, I'm not going to do that much. So we'll bring that back to maybe 8, 9 dB max. And then we're going to bring down the threshold. I'm going to set the frequency to more around 5600. Let's try this.
Past pain plays like projections in my mind. Pass the time by venting through these lines all in the summertime. The sun is much brighter when I picture you in it. Last time you showed up, clouded connections severed. I doubt it amounts to more than surface attractions or pleasant distractions. And I got frustrations now. Yeah, could you and I weather a storm if any or plenty? Cause calm waters and sunsets ain't promised, let's be honest.
All right, so dialing in a little bit, you can hear that we're getting a much better result. It does take a little bit of time to dial in the right setting on the vocal because you do have, a lot of different options here. It's a very powerful De-Esser. Check this one out. Give it another chance if you have not been using it up to this point. All right, y'all. So those are my top stock mixing plugins for Logic Pro that you should know about. And if you haven't been using them, go back and check them out. If maybe you on first try weren't that impressed, hopefully you saw in this video that they can be extremely useful once you get a feel for them. We've got a amazing echo and delay processor in Delay Designer, De-Esser 2, new and improved sibilance detection and attenuation there. Silververb, very efficient little room reverb, great for masking and accentuating some acoustic spaces. Phat FX, a lot of stuff packed in here that lends itself extremely well to vocal processing. Very easy to use compression. We can do that nice preamp emulation with the distortion section. And then finally the spreader, which I get a lot of questions from you all who are trying to process mono signals, make them wide, make them exciting. Great for using on your background vocals. Hope you all find this helpful. If you have any questions about the plugins we covered, or maybe you've got some that you want to add to the list, please share them in the comment section. If you learned anything in the video, please like, subscribe, and consider sharing. And we'll talk to you soon.
Can we have this real conversation? You always got those looks that kill. Your loyalty is my confirmation. Just let go of all your fears.